Stephen Colbert sat behind his desk with his usual warm grin as the audience roared, the band fading out into the background while the cameras locked in on the legendary guest walking onto the stage with his trademark confidence. Tom Cruise, dressed sharply but casual enough to look approachable, shook Colbert's hand before sitting down, waving at the cheering crowd, then leaning back with that familiar smile. And Stephen leaned forward with a sparkle in his eyes saying, "Tom Cruise, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Cruise." I have to admit, Tom, when they told me you were coming tonight, I thought, great, I can finally ask the man who has hung off cliffs, planes, and the side of skyscrapers, why in the world do you keep trying to kill yourself on camera? The audience laughed. Tom chuckled, but his tone was measured. Well, Stephen, I don't see it as trying to kill myself. I see it as living, pushing limits, giving audiences something real. When you watch me hanging off the Burj Khalifa, that's me. There's no trick, no hiding. I believe in authenticity. Colbert raised an eyebrow. Authenticity is wonderful, but don't you ever think maybe authenticity is a little overrated when you're hanging from a plane 30,000 feet up? Tom leaned forward slightly, his smile tightening. If people come to see a Tom Cruise movie, they expect real. They deserve it. That's why I do it. That's why I've always done it. The audience clapped, but Colbert wasn't satisfied. He shot back. But isn't that a little egotistical? Like, are you saying that no one else could deliver a good movie unless you're risking your life for it? What about the crews, the stunt teams, the directors? Aren't they part of the authenticity? Tom's smile slipped just a little, the first crack in his polished public armor. Stephen, I respect everyone I work with. But let me tell you something, there are moments when it's all on me. When I'm strapped to a plane, when I'm on that motorcycle going off a cliff, that's not a stunt double, that's not CGI. That's me giving everything I've got. And you know what? I think audiences feel that. Stephen leaned back, his grin still fixed but his tone sharpening. Sure, but some might say it's less about the audience and more about proving something to yourself. Maybe even some control issues? You want to be in charge of every frame, every moment. Tom's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, his body stiffening though he still held onto a calm exterior. Control issues? That's your interpretation. What I have is commitment. There's a difference. The audience chuckled nervously, sensing the tension rising, and Stephen, seeing an opportunity, leaned in again. Come on, Tom, you've got to admit. People out there, they wonder if maybe you're addicted to the spotlight, addicted to proving you're indestructible. I mean normal actors. Tom suddenly raised his hand, his voice sharp but still controlled. Stop. Just stop there. You're trying to turn this into some armchair psychology session. This is not why I'm here tonight. The crowd fell half silent, half gasping at the sudden firmness in his tone, and Colbert blinked, caught off guard but unwilling to let go. Tom, this is a talk show. We talk, we explore, we ask questions. Tom cut him off, his voice rising now with a commanding clarity that silenced the audience entirely. Then let's talk about the work. Let's talk about the films, the people who put their lives into them, not sit here and reduce everything to some psychoanalysis headline. I've dealt with enough of that in my life, Stephen. If this is the direction you want to go, then stop the show right now. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, the audience gasping audibly, some clapping nervously not knowing if it was scripted or real, and Stephen, caught between his comedic instincts and the reality of a visibly frustrated Tom Cruise, laughed awkwardly. Wait, did you just say stop the show? Are you serious? Tom leaned forward, his eyes locked on Colbert's. Yes. If you want to drag this into some cheap psychodrama, then stop the show. I came here to share stories, to inspire people, not to be dissected. The tension was electric, and Stephen tried to recover by softening his tone. All right, let's not stop the show, Tom. I promise we won't call in Freud or Jung tonight. But you have to admit, this is fascinating. People want to know why you push yourself to the edge. It's not criticism, it's curiosity. Tom exhaled slowly, composing himself, the smile creeping back though thinner now. Fine. Curiosity is fair. But don't cross the line into judgment. I've dedicated my life to telling stories on the biggest scale possible. If I have to go to the edge of a mountain to do that, I will. That's who I am. The audience erupted in applause again, partly out of admiration, partly out of relief that the explosion seemed to have cooled, but Stephen's eyes were glinting with something else, a sense that he had stumbled onto a fragile spot in Tom's carefully maintained image, and that the night had only just begun. Stephen shifted in his chair, trying to mask the tension with a smile, but his tone betrayed curiosity laced with just enough provocation to keep the audience hooked. Tom, I respect the passion truly, but don't you think sometimes that passion can scare people? I mean, right now when you said stop the show, I swear half this audience thought they were about to see Tom Cruise walk off stage on live television. The crowd laughed nervously, clapping lightly, unsure if they were supposed to laugh or brace for something more dramatic, and Tom leaned forward, his hands clasped, his eyes steady. Stephen, I don't scare people. What I do is challenge them. And sometimes when people are challenged, they mistake it for fear. But I'm not here to back down, not in my life, not in my work, not on your show. Colbert nodded, seizing on the word, challenge. That's interesting. So, is this all a challenge, Tom? The stunts, the interviews, even this conversation, are you challenging me right now? Because I'll be honest, I feel a little like I'm being auditioned for Mission Impossible. The audience chuckled, but Tom didn't laugh. Instead he allowed a beat of silence, his expression unreadable before he said calmly, No, Stephen. But you are testing me. And I'm not someone who likes to be tested without good reason. The mood shifted again, the crowd leaning in as though they could feel the invisible tug-of-war happening right in front of them. Stephen, never one to back away from a volatile moment, smiled wider. Tom, let me explain something about this show. We poke, we prod, we joke, because people want to see not just the movie star but the man behind the movie star. And if that means testing you a little, maybe it's because the man behind Tom Cruise is even more fascinating than the guy on the motorcycle. Tom tilted his head, his smile returning faintly though his voice carried a sharp edge. And what if I don't want to be your case study? What if I came here to celebrate the work, the craft, the risks, and not to be reduced to someone's late-night experiment? Stephen leaned forward, his elbows on the desk now, clearly leaning into the storm instead of away. Then maybe that's where you and I see the world differently. You think authenticity is about doing death-defying stunts. I think authenticity is about letting people see who you really are, even if it's uncomfortable. Maybe especially when it's uncomfortable. The audience clapped, sensing a duel of philosophies, and Tom's jaw tightened just enough for the cameras to catch, his voice low and deliberate. You don't know me, Stephen. You don't know the things I've been through, the sacrifices I've made, the reasons I do what I do. You sit here with your cards, your jokes, and you think you can sum up my life in a soundbite. That's not authenticity. That's entertainment. The word stung, and Colbert laughed awkwardly, raising his hands. Guilty as charged. I am in the entertainment business, Tom. But so are you. The difference is, I make people laugh with words. You make people gasp with stunts. Maybe what we're both doing isn't so different after all. Tom paused, the tension flickering across his face as if he wanted to disagree but found himself caught by the logic, maybe. But let's not pretend it's the same risk. If one of your jokes bombs, nobody dies. If one of my stunts goes wrong, it's not funny, it's over. The crowd gasped, then applauded, sensing the gravity of his words, and Colbert nodded slowly, softening just a touch. That's fair. But do you ever think about the people who love you? Your family, your friends, your fans. What happens to them if it really is over? Do you ever think maybe what scares them isn't the stunt, but losing you? For the first time, Tom hesitated, his eyes flickering downward, the polished veneer slipping just slightly, and he let out a small sigh. Every day. I think about it every single day. But I also think about legacy. About what I leave behind. And I'd rather be remembered as the man who gave everything than the man who played it safe. The audience erupted in applause again, moved by the rawness of his words, and Stephen smiled, sensing he had peeled back something real. See, now that's authentic. That's the man behind the movie star. You didn't have to hang off a cliff for people to feel that, Tom. You just had to say it. Tom gave him a look, half defiant, half appreciative. Maybe you're right. Or maybe I just gave you exactly the clip you were looking for. The crowd laughed, and Colbert leaned back, hands raised. Hey, I'll take it, I'm not ashamed. But let's not pretend this hasn't been one of the most intense interviews I've had in years. I mean, I thought I'd be talking about behind-the-scenes bloopers. Instead, I'm debating philosophy with a man who just threatened to stop my show on live television. Tom smiled now, though the energy was still tense. Well, you wanted authenticity. That's what it looks like. Messy, unpredictable, maybe even uncomfortable. Colbert nodded. Messy and uncomfortable are ratings gold, Tom, but I have to admit, I respect you more right now than when you walked out here. You didn't just give me the charm, you gave me the heat. And audiences, they can tell the difference." Tom leaned back, crossing his arms. "I'll take that as a compliment." Stephen smirked. "You should. But let's make a deal. We don't stop the show yet. Not until I at least get you to tell me one outrageous behind-the-scenes story that proves you're still human and not just a machine programmed for stunts." Tom laughed softly, the tension breaking just a fraction. "All right. But only if you're ready to hear about the time a helicopter nearly crashed because I wouldn't cut a scene." The audience gasped and cheered, leaning forward with anticipation, and Stephen pointed at him dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because apparently even helicopters can't stop Tom Cruise." Tom leaned forward, his hands animated now as he dove into the story. "So we're filming this sequence, and I'm piloting the helicopter myself, which, by the way, I had to train extensively for because they didn't want me doing it, but I insisted. We're flying through a canyon, cameras mounted on the outside, and there's this moment where I'm supposed to dive the chopper down and pull it up just in time. What I didn't realize was that the crosswinds were stronger than expected, and suddenly, the helicopter lurched. For a split second, I thought, that's it. We're going down." The crew in the back, their eyes were wide, and I swear I could feel their fear. But I stayed calm, corrected, and we pulled out of it. When we landed, one of the crew members got out, kissed the ground and said, "Never again, Tom. Never again." The audience gasped, then applauded wildly, some laughing nervously. Colbert raised his eyebrows, shaking his head. "Never again? Tom, for most people that means literally never again, but for you I'm guessing it meant, let's do another take." The crowd roared. Tom smiled, nodding slightly. "You're right. We did it again. Because we had to get it right." The audience clapped, but Colbert leaned in with a wry grin. "But that's exactly the thing, Tom. You scare the hell out of people. Not just audiences, but your own colleagues. At some point, don't you wonder if it crosses the line from brave to reckless?" The room went quiet, and Tom's smile dropped, his voice lower now. "Reckless? No. What's reckless is living half a life. What's reckless is never daring, never risking. I'm not reckless. I'm alive." The silence that followed was thick, the audience unsure if they should clap, until Colbert, pushing just one step too far, said softly, "Or maybe you're just afraid of being ordinary." The words hung heavy, and Tom sat still for a moment, his eyes locked on Stephen's with a piercing intensity. Then, with a sudden sharpness, he leaned forward and said firmly, "Stop. Right there. That's exactly the kind of thing I was talking about earlier. You want to box me in, label me, reduce me to some neat little soundbite. I won't let you. If that's what this show is about, then I'm done." Gasps swept across the studio, the audience in shock as Tom stood up slightly, his hands pressing the armrests as if he might actually walk off. Stephen quickly raised his hands, trying to defuse the bomb he had just set off. Tom, wait, don't leave. I pushed too hard, I admit it. This isn't about labels, it's about giving people a glimpse of what drives you. And maybe, just maybe, I went too far trying to dig for it. But look at this room, listen to them." The audience burst into applause, a mix of encouragement and desperation to keep the moment from collapsing, and Tom stayed standing for a second before slowly sitting back down, his jaw tight but his voice controlled. "I'm not afraid of being ordinary, Stephen. I'm afraid of not giving everything I can. That's the truth. Take it or leave it." The applause grew louder, the audience on their feet now, and Colbert, seizing the moment, leaned across the desk and said sincerely, "Then that's the clip people will remember. Not me poking at you, not the conflict, but you saying that. That's the most human thing anyone could ask for." Tom finally allowed a small genuine smile, his shoulders relaxing. "Then maybe we don't need to stop the show after all." The tension broke, the audience cheering wildly, the band striking up a celebratory riff, and Colbert laughed. "Well, thank God, because I've got a mortgage and I need this gig. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Cruise." The cameras panned across the crowd, still buzzing from the near meltdown they had witnessed, an episode destined to be replayed and debated for weeks, remembered as the night Tom Cruise nearly walked off Stephen Colbert's stage, before pulling it back into one of the most raw and unforgettable interviews of his career.